this week, Zach, as we head to Twitter. Jonathan Jones, CBS, at JJones9, sources to at NFL on CBS. Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa has skipped the majority of voluntary offseason work as a long-term extension with Miami has yet to materialize. Answer this question for me, Zach. Where's the story here? Like, I'm failing to grasp the significance of Tua not showing up to voluntary with a V, voluntary off-season workouts. Am I missing something here?
No, there's no story here. You know what the story is? He's getting his contract put together, and maybe he was working out with his own guys at the time. I don't think Tua was sitting on his couch.
In California. He's been out in California most of this offseason.
Right. You know, I don't care if he's in California, Hawaii, Texas, if he went to Germany, Australia, I don't care. Show me a couple videos of him working out and throwing a football around, whether it's Nick Hicks in the Perform Institute or whatever the case may be. I don't care. It's voluntary. You know what it's a story? When they start OTAs and he doesn't show up, but he did, that would be the story. Okay, a whole team is there. They're putting in some work. They're not doing a lot, but Tua's not showing up. Okay, well, they're working on the contract. Then maybe you have a little bit of a story. Go to all the other cities. How many teams are in the NFL? 32, am I right with that number? Go to all the cities. And when the quarterback is getting in the contract negotiations and he doesn't show up to an involuntary workout, who cares? You know he's just waiting for that pen to go on the dotted line, which will be any time now. We're going to break this news, whether it's in the middle of one of our shows or the day after our show, or probably with our luck, the second we sign off, he'll sign the big extension because that always happens. But honestly, unless you heard from his camp saying we're so far apart and we really might need to ask for a trade at that point, there's your story. Until I hear that, until I hear Tua's agent come out and say, we're so far apart, this thing could actually be a big problem, it's not a story. Voluntary work. I didn't show up for the voluntary thing at my radio station that we had for appreciation because I had to take my kid to the dentist. My boss didn't call me and ask me if I'm ever coming to work again. She just said, is everything okay? Yeah, I took my kid to the dentist. Cool, have a great day. We'll see you at the next time. Big bleeping deal.
I find it perplexing, and I need to add this for context. I used to be the president of the Tua Tagovailoa fan club in Palm Beach County in the Treasure Coast before I was impeached and then removed from office. But I am generally going to back Tua no matter the situation, no matter what's said, no matter the criticism. I'm going to back Tua. Now, am I full-fledged, wool over my eyes, going to follow him as if I'm a disciple of his to his final days? No, I'm not going to do that. And I also want the Dolphins to be very smart with his money and not just say highest paid quarterback in the league. But there is something about Tua that brings people to the absolute extremes. And I've been trying to figure out for years why this is the case. I don't know if it's the Alabama thing. I don't know if it's the Jesus is my Lord and Savior thing. I don't know if it's the doesn't throw a bullet thing. People are just sick of the discourse. I don't know what it is, but people go to these extremes. If he throws an incompletion, what a pile of shit. Right. If he has a 300-yard game, see, that's the best quarterback in the NFL. Nobody can find common ground when it comes to Tua, and we're seeing it here with his contract because you said it, Zach. This happens every year with every quarterback who's in a contract year. They hold out or they don't show up to voluntary workouts or they skip OTAs. If Tua skips the upcoming OTAs, you know what? It's fine because everybody else does it. It doesn't mean that there is this cavernous rift between the Dolphins and Tua that's not going to. Guess what? Tua's going to play quarterback for the Dolphins in 2024. I'm going to break the news for you right here. Restructured, extended deal or not, Tua's going to be under center for the Dolphins in 2024. Want to know why? Because he's under contract. Okay. Right. So all of this hair pulling in this teeth gnashing and this nail chewing. It's needless. This isn't news, but you know what's going to happen, Zach, is the media, they know what's click, 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 click.
Oh,
so
of course.
anything that Tua does or doesn't do, Tua didn't show up to voluntary workouts. Tua didn't show up to the OTAs that any other quarterback that holds out decides not to come to. Tua showed up a couple of days late to report to training camp, and we're going to pull our... You know what I saw on social media this morning? Dolphins fans freaking out because Tua and his side had the audacity to turn down one contract offer.
Right.
Are you people listening? Like, this is business.
Right.
Like, do you think that business is done where a CEO walks into another CEO's office and says, hey, I'll buy your company for $500,000 and a box of Cheez-Its from Sam's Club? And the guy's like, oh, okay, shake hands. Like, that's not how business works. It's a give and take. It's a negotiation. It takes days. It takes weeks. It takes months. Like, would everybody take some Valium and chill? Like, Tua, Zach, Tua brings people to the most irrational places of their subconscious.
He's the most polarizing player, I think, really in the NFL at this point. I really think he is. I think there's plenty of good players in the NBA, NFL. I think there's great elite. I think they're all over the place. For some reason, everything this guy does, like you said it before, good game, bad game, contract negotiation, showing up for OTAs, not showing up for OTAs, whatever the case may be, it's something that's headline news and everyone has to have it, except for kind of the people down here in South Florida a little bit because they kind of know what's going on. But for Jonathan Jones and guys like that out of town, they hear word that he didn't go to a voluntary workout. Well, he's not showing up. There's a big problem. I just think that you need to put everything in perspective with Tua and with the quarterback situation. Take his name and make it anything else. Make his name Mike White and see at that point what happens with that when we're talking about it. It's not that big of a deal. Oh, he'll sign the contract. We'll get him into camp. It'll be fine. But it's Tua, like you said, coming from Alabama, winning national championships, playing for Nick Saban, being the 5th pick in the draft over Justin Herbert, who came into the league, and he was the next Dan Marino, who still hasn't won a playoff game at all. Same thing with Tua, but still hasn't even gotten there, really, except for blowing a big lead in one of the games. But you just look at Tua, and it's just like everything this guy does. It's front page material. How about this, everybody? Take a deep breath. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't think Ken is either. Maybe we'll learn that in the next episode or not if he is, but I don't think he is. I also think that Ken's right that the starting quarterback for the Dolphins this year is going to be Tua. Whether he's playing under a 5 or 6 year extension for $100 billion or he's under that 5th-year option because they couldn't come to anything and they need to put him under something. It doesn't matter. He's going to be the quarterback this year. If he doesn't sign an extension, I'd be shocked. If he doesn't sign an extension before the season starts, I would be completely shocked. And at that point, maybe we have some news. But until then, they're negotiating. He's the starting quarterback. That's where all the money in the NFL goes now, is to that starting quarterback. He wants to get paid more than the last guy did. That was Jared Goff. So now all of a sudden the dollars moved up a little bit. Of course, that's the whole thing. But if we're talking about a quarterback, this is what happens. But we're talking about Tua. It's front page breaking news. Give me a bleeping break at this point. I literally, every time Tua comes up in the news, I know it's going to be for something stupid, and not for something stupid he did, for something stupid and someone's kind of point on how crazy it is. Right.
I promise you it's okay to acknowledge that Tua is really, really good and doesn't get enough appreciation, and also acknowledge that he's maybe not the best quarterback in the NFL. Like, I promise you can live in that headspace. That brings me to this. So I love overthecap.com. And this is the current rundown. You're looking at the current rundown, and if you're listening on the podcast, I'll go through the numbers with you. But the succession of highest paid quarterbacks in the entire NFL. For those on YouTube, we'll take the logo out of the way so you can see in full here. All right. So this is just sort of going in order of average per year salary. Okay. So Joe Burrow right now is on top at $55 million per year. Okay. He has Fully guaranteed 146.5, total guaranteed 219. So that's guaranteed after he hits certain incentives, things like that. Jared Goff with his new 4-year deal with the Lions, he's now at $53 million per year. There's Justin Herbert at 52.5 now. Lamar Jackson at 52 million after he signed last year, and then Jalen Hurts at 51 million. Now, let me ask you, Zach, Tua, does he deserve to be somewhere within those top 5 based on the people and the numbers that we just talked about? Burrow, Goff, Herbert, Jackson, Hurts. Should Tua be in those 5 names, or do we have to go down a little further into the Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins territory?
I think he is in between Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray in that category. He's right there, right under the top 5 and very close to it. Jared Goff to me.
Hurts real quick. Let me hold on. Hurts 51 million and Kyler Murray 46. That is
right.
Per year salary, and then Hurts is 110 fully guaranteed, and Murray's 103 fully guaranteed. There you go, just for context.
Right, and I think that's where he is. And if he ends up being a little bit more than Jalen Hurts, and right in that Lamar Jackson category, that's fine also. I don't think he's Daniel Jones $40 million a year. I think if you offered him $40 million a year, he would literally rip it up and throw it in your face, because that's just not where he should be right now. Yeah, I know he hasn't won a playoff game or a Super Bowl or anything. I get it. Well, so is a lot of people on this list, by the way, who haven't won a playoff game or a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow got his team to the Super Bowl very early. Jared Goff and that Detroit Lions team is really good, and they're probably going to be good for the next couple of years in general. Justin Herbert hasn't really done anything, but it's the whole lore of Justin Herbert, so he's going to get paid like that. Lamar Jackson's won MVP twice. There's a guy on this list that should be higher than he is, probably should be Lamar Jackson. And Jalen Hurts got his team to a Super Bowl. So right underneath that, look at the names. And I know you just said Kyler Murray. And in order without kind of giving out the numbers, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins are the next 3. Yeah, he should be above those guys at this point, or right there at there. And then you go down the list a little bit more without giving away the money stuff. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, 2 guys you didn't name yet, that should be the top of that list, not even a question. Right. And they're not up there. And they're not crying because they know the money's going to be there. Tua is going to be in that top 5, I think. He is going to be in that top 5. He's going to knock Jalen Hurts probably out of there when it's all said and done and the contract gets done and guarantees are all done. And I'm perfectly fine with that. What else do you want to do? You want to not pay the guy and move on and look for another quarterback? You want to draft Cam Ward from the Hurricanes next year? What do you want to do, Dolphin fans? Because I just want to get a guy in there and see what can happen. And if Mike McDaniel, who I trust right now, not trust 5 years from now, but trust right now, says that Tua could be the guy in his offense, I have to put a little bit of faith and trust in that. Maybe it's my blind faith and my fanism of being a Dolphins fan for this long, but I'm going to ride with that. But if you don't pay this guy 48, 49, 50, 52, $55 million, what do you think is going to end up happening? Someone else is going to pay him, and it's not going to be the Dolphins. So what are you thinking out there? And by the way, fans, I can't believe we're going to pay him $54 million a year, $55 million a year. It's not your money. Shut up. Let Stephen Ross worry about that. And Tom Garfinkel, when they're selling F1 races in the Miami Open to get some more revenue in that stadium for that team and for everybody. I don't care. It's not my money. Pay the guy and let's stop worrying about it at this point.
I just feel like there is. I agree with you. Between Hurts and Murray, that's probably where I would put Tua. I think Tua is going to end up making between Lamar and Jalen Hurts. And I would think Jalen Hurts is at $110 million fully guaranteed. I could see Tua at like 120 because Lamar Jackson's at 135, 120, and then a ton of incentive-based total guarantee money because he's got to stay on the field, and you want him to keep putting up numbers. The durability is what limits Tua. And so if you put in incentive-laden total guarantees, I think that would make fans, and even me, who's a Tua endorser, but I certainly understand the flaws of Tua, that would make me feel better about the entire situation.
All right, so let me ask you this, Ken. So going into last year, start of the season, maybe, and both of us have been around this Dolphins team and seen rosters for the last 20 years, maybe the single best roster this franchise has ever had, top to bottom, last season. I mean, we're talking from quarterback to long snapper and everyone in between. Probably the best roster they've ever had. They did not win a playoff game, and I can understand people's frustration with that as well. That's plenty fine. I get it. What are you going to do if you have to start all over with a quarterback for this team. If you start all over with a quarterback, you might as well blow the whole thing up and just start the whole thing again. Because what are you going to do? Put a 22-year-old quarterback in here with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and pay them both $30 million a year. You just brought in Odell Beckham. You think that's going to be good for a quarterback that's just getting his kind of feet wet in the NFL? No, it is not. Let me give you that advice right now. No, it is not. Go back and look at any teams that have young quarterbacks and veteran wide receivers, and especially if they're a little bit diva on them, it never worked out for any of those guys. Ask Chad Henne how he feels about Brandon Marshall and all that. So, yeah, go back to all these things, and that's plenty fine. I just look at the fact that this Dolphins team is right there on the cusp, or we're right there on the cusp. Maybe they took a step back, obviously, this year because of player personnel and guys they had to lose. But what does the Dolphin fan want out there? Because there's such a split, like you said. You could go get 10 Dolphin fans, line them up here on our show, and ask them, each one of them, do you like Tua? Do you not like Tua? I think you're going to get a 50-50 split. Oh, he's great. He's our guy in the future. Next guy can't throw a ball. He throws ducks, this and that. That's fine. Okay, so the guys that he throws ducks, you want to go draft a kid? You want Mike White to start the season and see what happens? You want Skylar Thompson? You want to bring one of those guys in and have them do it? Or do you rather go with a guy that right now, when he's healthy, and the question I wanted to pose to you before was, going into last season before it started with that roster, the number one thing I think for Tua people out there, whether you loved him or hate him, was durability. Can he last the season?
Yeah.
They basically showed you last year he could do it.
I'm more worried about Tua, late season Tua, and cold Tua than I am.
More than I am hurt Tua. Right. I am.
Right.
I'm right there with you. You know what? You got to get over that Buffalo hump. If you're a Dolphins fan, you know that already. New England is kind of New England at this point. It's not Brady and Belichick New England anymore. So at least you have that in your back pocket. And up there in New York, well, you got the Jets. And they have Aaron Rodgers. We'll actually see what they're like this year because we only got to see 4 plays of that last year, which is still one of the funniest stories ever. Not that he got hurt, but just Jets' funny story. But beat the Bills. The schedule's out. Beat the Bills in week 2. Okay, beat the Bills in week 10 or whatever it is also when you have to actually play them. Like, do that. Beat them in the nasty 8:30 p.m. Hopefully it rains all day heat on that Thursday night here for the Buffalo Bills so they could cry to OSHA or whatever the hell they cry to up there in Buffalo. And then when you go back up to Buffalo right before Thanksgiving, thank God it's before Thanksgiving and not after, and you don't have to beat them again. And you know, if Tua does that, if Tua beats some of these teams, then I think the perception of Tua is going to be so much different. The problem is, and we saw it last year, Tua beat up on the bad teams, and then when he played the good teams, he lost. And that's the way people are looking at it. The worst kind of taste you could have in your mouth is mediocrity. And I think that's what they have with Tua at this point, where he's good versus the bad teams, bad versus the good teams. That needs to change. And luckily for him and this Dolphins team, it's going to happen in the first 6 days of the regular season when they have 2 games, including that Thursday nighter.
Hopefully the mediocrity is left to us. By all accounts, with Levesque and Krantz.